Drink a sewer nurse.
So watching me drink water from a coffee cup, you probably made a bunch of generalizations and observations on why a 15-year-old might be drinking coffee in the first place, as well as what social class I'm in, why I'm wearing this shirt, if I'm a boy or a girl, and a whole bunch of other questions that might have immediately popped into your head. Which is why today we're going to be tackling social studies part 1 of 3. We are going to be looking at group social structures, exclusion, and rivalry. Please share this video with your friends, your teammates, your delegation, your Scholars Cup, Facebook, whatever. That way people can benefit from studying more in less time. Let's get right into it. First up is the basic features of a social group. Starting off with power structures, which is a general hierarchy that classifies people based on how much power and authority they have. In these types of group, people with more power rise to the top and have more authority and lead more people, as seen in dictators. Next up is a role, which is simply the purpose someone has in a social group. Now onto communication structures, which are actually different in every social group, but put simply, it is the practical guidelines and frameworks set by a group of people that help the people in group hold productive decisions and manage conflict. As a general example, a group might have a system in which they discuss and deal with conflicts by calling the leader of the group and then having a vote between the members to decide the next steps on solving this problem. Now, group similarity is a group that has similar values, similar ideas, and similar ideologies. Interdependence is when two or more people or groups depend on each other for survival. An example would be if two groups were trading resources between each other, and then one of the groups or both of the groups could not live without the other person's resource. Next up is entitativity, which is when a group is considered as a pure entity. The Scholars Cup asks, when does a group think of itself as a group? Mobs are crowds with the members who are quick to take action and engage in some violent behavior. It can also be indicating groups of people who want to cause trouble or violence to resolve an issue. Crowds are a group of people who are organized together for a specific agenda or strategic purpose. Unlike mobs, crowds are somewhat civilized and can solve problems with debate and strategy. Unlike mobs, which just kind of hoard in an area and just kind of take over with all the people, like the pitchforks. Next is the Tuckman Model, which is a group development model proposed by Tuckman, coincidentally, and consists of the group stages of forming, storming, norming, and performing, which is a necessary 4-step process for a new group to step up to a challenge, solve problems, plan, find solutions, and deliver results. This model works well for goal-driven groups such as businesses to quickly and effectively solve problems and keep on increasing the skill level of the group. Next model is the Seceder Model, which shows that wanting to be different than other people can actually create its own group of its own. For example, anti-vaxxers can be considered as a group under the Seceder Model, as they wanted to be different away from the vaccinators, so they created their own social group and have a very justified reason for doing that. As well as Homans Theory, where I'm actually going to quote this from orally.com. It's a very good explanation. Quote, the interaction between the group and the environment in which it operates shapes both the behavior of the group and its final outcome. Social exchange theory states that when we are in a relationship, we always either give or take to kind of be equal with the other person and stay in that relationship, whether we're giving money, time, gifts, or something the other person values. This theory also states that if the risks of being with this person, or like the negative connotations, what I'm gonna do with them, what I'm gonna be, outweighs the benefits, meaning what I'm gonna get in being in this relationship, then one of the people will be quickly to terminate the relationship. In economics, this theory states that relationships like these can also happen when one group has other resources or other products another group wants. Swarm behavior. This is when animals travel together in a large group. That way other predators or other living organisms cannot take them down and break apart the group or target specific individuals because there's just so many animals. Like a herd of buffaloes running through the savannah, it's really hard for tigers to just pinpoint one of them, so it's an effective strategy for moving as a group. Herd mentality, on the other hand, is very similar, except it's when human beings, specifically people, start doing what other people are doing, kind of just to like fit in and because it's the status quo. This is one of the reasons why so many people are fat, or why so many people are addicted to their phones, or why everybody's on like social media, or why we participate in riots sometimes. It's because we see other people doing it, we see other people consuming these foods, and we want to do it to like fit in, and we justify it just because the other people are doing it. Very interesting. Starting off with social identity theory, which is a person's sense of who they are based on what group they are in. It was first put forward by Henry Tagevell, which states that a human's source of pride and self-esteem is often derived from the social group that they are in. As well as self-categorization theory, which states that individuals and people are able to act and become their own social group. It's kind of as if the big, like, super jacked, super mean, cool bully kid in your school or wherever you go to, as if he's like the leader of like all the bully cool kids, you know? And then all of a sudden you put him in like a mall environment or somewhere else, he turns into like his own social group. Adding on is also something called dominant culture, which is when there's multiple different cultures present, and then one starts ranking up and starts going up in popularity, and often ends up dominating and becoming the key culture of an area. Next is a counterculture, which is a culture or a group that goes against traditional societal values or the status quo, such as in the 1960s when the hippie kids were going against their boring 9-to-5 parents. Next is highbrow, which is the people who are elite and have the most authority and most power and are just the coolest in the culture, as well as lowbrow, which is the exact opposite. The uncultured people, the people with lower status. Now to something called the Asch Paradigm, which is this type of test where people are shown 3 separate lines and they're asked to answer which one of the 3 is longer in size. Very simple.
Rules of this game are simple. Over here we've drawn a line, and over here we've drawn 3 lines, A, B, and C. Only one of these 3 lines is an exact match for the first line. Can you figure out which one it is?
It's A.
You think it's A?
I think so.
Okay, go to A. A. A.
It's A. Definitely A.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going with A.
Okay.
The answer seems obvious, right? Or is it? Take one last look. Are you going with these people who all picked A? Or did you choose to go with B or C? Time's up. Got your pick?
It's A.
You're gonna go with the group?
Yeah.
All right, great.
Is that what you picked? Or did you go with another answer? It turns out the answer to this round is C. And while you likely chose C first and stuck with your answer, we also know that some viewers might have felt the peer pressure and switched to A.
So basically what's going on is that we want to conform and believe what the herd says or what the other people say instead of trusting our own instinct. Next up is the Crutchfield Situation, which is similar to the Asch Paradigm, except this time instead of being shown lines, they're shown they're asked to say if the area of a circle or of a star is bigger. And then what they do is they shine a light on either the star or the circle and say that where the light is shown is where the average person or where everyone is answering. Of course, that light being shown is fake by the experimenters, and the results showed that less people followed the light, unlike the Asch Paradigm. The main reason was because the results were hidden, meaning other people could not actually see what the individual was writing down. Now onto exclusion and rivalry, with the first term being in-group and out-group. In-group is a group where a person psychologically considers themselves part of, whether they are or whether they aren't. And out-group is when a person does not consider themselves part of a specific group. For example, a regular jacked up soccer player might not consider himself as being part of the sports or the jock people at the school, when in reality he is, so he's conforming to out-group here. Next is outgroup homogeneity, which is when people classify people, other individuals outside of their own group as being very similar to each other and comparing their own individuals inside their own group as being diverse. As well as trait description bias, which is when people look at their own traits, their own personal traits, as very complicated and interconnected, and then look at others people's traits as predictable. Intergroup interactions is the interaction between people of different social groups, something that has been widely studied throughout history. Social comparison is when you rank yourself to other people, whether that's in a positive way or a negative way, and you always seem to compare their results to your results. Similarly, social invisibility is when people are often overlooked in society, something I talked a lot in my history video, so you can check one out right here. But basically, this is when people are often ignored in society, they're not taken care of, and they're not seen at all. Basically, they're invisible, I guess you could say. As a result, these people face exclusion from society. Next up is the Amity-Enmity Complex, which states that we evolved in cultures and social groups, and that in order to fit in with each other, we have to either conform or will be kicked out. This is often why people conform to the herd mentality, or to groups in the first place. It's because if they don't conform, if they don't do what other people do, they'll fear that they'll miss out, or they'll be kicked, or they'll just be rejected overall from society. So those who are outgrouped and don't really feel like they belong to society and don't act like it, are often faced with harsh criticism. Internalized oppression is when one group systematically oppresses another. Over long periods of time, this type of oppression can start to become normal in cultures and societal groups, and it's really not okay for the children who live there, because ultimately they didn't do anything, yet they're being pushed upon, they're being harshed, and they're getting all these negative stigmas for just being in a specific culture or a specific group. Similarly is the black sheep effect, which is a phrase used to describe the weird or the weak of a group. These type of people are often considered less valuable. For example, in Sparta, if Spartan kids were born with a disability, they would often be exiled, as in the future they would be less valuable to society as a whole. Next up is something called Robber's Cave, which is basically this experiment to test realistic conflict theory, basically by getting a whole bunch of 12-year-olds, putting them in the wild, making them first bond, and then separating them, and then making them both compete for trophies and medals by playing football and treasure hunts. As you might expect, the entire thing started getting very complicated and violent as the kids started burning the other team's flags, as they're just fist fighting on the field for the trophy. I mean, what else do you expect from a bunch of 12-year-old boys for a competition of trophies and survival? Once the competition was over, both groups were forced to then bond and work together to solve issues, such as pulling a truck that is stuck in mud. In the end, the boys became their own culture and proved that conflict for a limited amount of resources does lead to discrimination. And finally is the Standford prison experiment.
Get me out of here! I want out! I want out now!
Yes, which is an experiment conducted in the 1970s, which tested how university students, given these prison roles, would react and how they would deal with their new role at prison. So 22 students were selected at random, and then by the flip of a coin, half of them were turned into prisoners and the other half were turned into guards. Only 48 hours later, the guards were beating up the prisoners and making them do pointless tasks, and it was just a chaos. Then the researchers started becoming the prison guard supervisor and trying to control everything instead of actually researching how people would conform with their new jobs.
Prisoners. Those are not subjects. Those are boys, and you are harming them.
As an end result, people are very likely to conform to their social role, especially if it is very cleared and stereotyped, such as these guards. Okay, that is it for part 1 of 3 of the social studies curriculum for the 2019 World Scholars Cup curriculum. I hope you found this video helpful. There's a Quizlet down below. You should definitely join the class. It would help you study and you compete with others, including me. And if you found this video helpful, please share it about. That is it for this video. I hope you found it helpful. And until next time, stay productive. I'll see you guys later. Goodbye. It's especially refreshing after a long day of work. So if you thought this was coffee, it's actually something called H2O, you know. You probably shouldn't judge people on how they look or how tired. Who wrote this script?